How else do you think AI and machine learning are a little bit different?
I'll start with a really lame joke that I think is funny, but nobody else thinks is funny. And when you don't laugh, I won't be disappointed. Let's see if I can do this right. What programming language, so difference between AI and ML, what programming language is used for machine learning? Jason, let's talk about what are some programming languages, folks, that are used to machine learning, right?
I,
Lots of
I see a lot of R. I see a lot of Python. Anything that's big data sets, really good for that. Yeah.
them, sure, right? So that's, yeah, great answer. What language is used for artificial intelligence? And the answer is PowerPoint slide. Sorry. Some people will say machine learning puts AI to work.
Yeah.
Right. That's one of the meanings behind the joke. The other one is always that if you're talking about AI, you're pitching something that's not real or is
Yep.
vaporware or whatever. AI has been with us a long time, but I would argue, and a couple of things, let me take a step back. You could argue that there are two kind of divisions of AI, one generative AI, one predictive AI.
Yep.
That's two interesting divisions that I think are useful. Predictive AI can basically, how should I put this? Predict things. Predictive AI is something that you would argue, and there's somebody, I want to say it was from Palo Alto Networks, he's the CFO, who said people are really talking about generative AI, and that's fine. Predictive AI tends to be a bit more precise. And as a CFO, a finance person, he prefers the predictive way of doing things. But the idea of, so that's one distinction that you could talk about generative AI, because generative AI uses a large language model. And basically what it does is it's a very fast automation that if it's trained enough, can do some very interesting simulations of human speech, right? And human communication. And so when it comes to generative AI, that captured people's imagination a year and a half ago. And that's largely due to a lot of things that Google and folks had done, basically cracking a bit of a code, as it were, to allow generative AI to take a few leaps. So
Yeah.
there's a little bit about
Yeah,
AI.
and I think that's a really good point because when we talk about AI, people always think that the first AI was ChatGPT, and that's actually not true,
I'll
right?
call
We've
it.
been using
Yeah.
AI for years. If you use Netflix, their recommendation engine, it's built on machine learning and AI. You
If
go
you're
from
a
big data to
Amazon,
machine learning to AI. Same thing with Amazon, right? If I go in there and look for a book on Security Plus, they know that I may also be interested in CISA and pen test because that comes next and they'll advertise to me again in 3 months, right?
that's right.
And there's those kind of things that happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, and predictive AI, for example, we've been using. Anybody ever heard of a spam filter before? Right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's using the naive Bayes algorithm. Is it Thomas Bayes? Bayes. That's a 17th
Yep.
century kind of philosopher, I think Methodist minister type person who came up with this algorithm. 17th century, right? I'm not saying we've been doing AI since the 17th century. What I'm saying is we're standing on the shoulders of giants
Oh,
and
yeah.
using that algorithm. And spam filters use that algorithm, have been for years. So you could argue spam filters have been doing AI for how long was spam filters?
Oh, yeah. I've been using it for at least 20 years in corporate America. So they're definitely there. Yeah. And I think the big difference with AI nowadays, especially with the GPTs, is that we can actually talk to them and use them and make them do things just using text. For those who haven't tried it yet, if you're on ChatGPT 4 and you're on the paid plan, you can create your own custom GPTs. And in fact, I've got 10 of these that I've created over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So if I want to do something like, I don't know, write new practice exam questions for Security Plus, I can literally train it and say, here's
Cool.
100 questions that I've written before in Jason's style. Here's the official CompTIA textbook. Here's the textbook Jason's written. Here's the textbook from 3 other people. Now go out and make me another 100 questions that are in this style, and it will generate those all day long. And they sound almost as if I did it myself, right? And it's getting, and the more you train it, the better you train it, the better it can be, especially when you are giving it your own source data, as opposed to just trusting the generic model. Because you trust the generic model, they may get something from the internet that is not accurate either. And that's always the thing you got to worry about with these is it's a black box. Things go in and things come out and you don't really know what happened in between.
It's so cool that you bring this up because what you're doing is you're talking about things like training. You're talking about things like that are implying the garbage in, garbage out, or in your case, not garbage in, cool stuff out.
Yep.
And I think it's one of the things that's really important to think about when it comes to, we'll talk about generative AI, the dialogue. What you did is you basically said, look, we have to have good data. And I think that's one of the
Yep.
first things to think about a dialogue. Right now, you and I are talking, right? And I'm a big fan of going back to the future. I'll mention Socrates or Socrates, that movie. What was that? Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, dated reference, right?
I love that movie. I'm a child of the 80s. I have to love that
There you
movie.
go. Okay. And these days, everybody loves Keanu Reeves. I don't think he's a very good actor, but sorry, I guess I've just offended everybody who loves John. Was it John Wick? Anyway, but the reason I bring it up is because Socrates taught what 2,200 years ago about the importance of a dialogue. You can talk about fancy words like dialectic or heuristic or whatever, but the key is a dialogue. And I think I was just in Rome recently doing a tour through, what was that, a couple of weeks ago, talking to some industry folks and some partners there. And in Rome, I wasn't able to make the Sistine Chapel. I didn't have any time. I had enough time to walk around the Colosseum before I had to take off to Milan. But the Sistine Chapel, right? The two fingers, you know what I'm talking about, right? And we
Yep.
could talk about one finger is AI, one finger is human, let's say, right? I think the real key to AI is the interaction. People want to focus on the AI, it's going to take your job or whatever, or it's going to do all the work for me and then I can stand on the shoulders of giants or whatever. But I think the smarter thing, and you did it just instinctively,
Yep.
Jason, is that dialogue and focusing on that. And one of the first things is about AI. I think if we really understand the data life cycle, in other words, we grab data from a lot of different sources, then we normalize it and mine it. And because that data can be such garbage, right?
Yep.
But how do you clean it up? And then that way you can feed proper data into the AI, right?
Oh, most definitely. And I think you hit the nail right on the head, which is you have to communicate with it and you have to understand how to use these technologies because
That's
if you're using ChatGPT, I've heard people go, "Oh, ChatGPT is horrible. I can't get it to do anything." I'm like, and I look at what they prompted. It's like they're asking it like it's Google, right? Like, what is the answer for this question? And I'm like, that's not how you talk to it.
yeah, do it.
What I always tell my people is treat it like it's a high school intern, right? It can do a lot of stuff. It's a 15 to 18-year-old person. They've got some knowledge, but they're not experts in anything. They're generalized. And I could tell them, hey, if I want you to be smarter, I want you to read this book, right? And I can actually upload that to ChatGPT and say, now using this book as your definitive source of reference, now answer my question.
Oh, what,
And it
see,
can
there
do
you
that
go.
because it can
Yeah.
learn very quickly and move on. But the more you talk to it, the more you tell it, no, I don't like the way you did that. I want you to do it this way. It gets better. It learns from you. And then it can do that again moving forward.
Any dialogue implies a certain form of stasis. I mean, fancy
Yeah.
word, but in other words, what is the body of knowledge or what is the topic that you and I are talking about, right? And if you bring that to stasis and figure it out, and that's just instinctively what you did, we've all been taught how to work with human beings. And the question becomes, how sophisticated can you be in working with human beings? And also, how sophisticated can you be in working with AI?